Good morning, everyone. Welcome. It's First Thoughts on a Friday. Yeah, our first thoughts about our gospel lesson that's coming up. And we have a doozy. It's the middle of Jesus' Sermon on the Plain as we have it in the Gospel of Luke. Hey, let me tell you something. If someone says, hey, I want you to memorize the Sermon on the Mount, raise your hand and say, hey, can I just memorize the Sermon on the Plain instead, the one that's in Luke? And they say, oh, yeah, go ahead. Jump at it because it's a lot shorter. Here we are. We got about 10 verses here, and we're in the middle of it. And there's only about another 10 or so verses left. Sermon on the Mount, that goes on chapter after chapter. It's a little bit longer, so take it. But, excuse me, here in this Sermon on the Plain, we're in the very middle of it, the real kernel, the real essence of the sermon. It's about love. Well, isn't the gospel all about love? The kernel of the gospel? Yep. Here it is. Loving your enemies, doing good to those who hate you, blessing those who curse you. And it goes on in that vein. And the whole part about someone strikes you in the cheek, say, hey, go on, do this one too. If anyone takes your coat, hey, give them your shirt as well. In fact, if anyone begs of you, and if anyone takes away your stuff, hey, go back to the house and get the rest of your stuff. Give that to them too. And don't expect it back. This is craziness. But this is the way we live in the kingdom of God. Now, here's what comes next in this passage. You're going to recognize it. Do to others as you would have them do to you. The golden rule. Hey, let's all live by that. Only, as I'm looking at this passage now and what follows, I think Jesus is trying to upend the golden rule. I think he's trying to say, it's not enough. That's not the way we live. How can I come up with that? It's what he says next. If you love those who love you, so what? Well, he doesn't say, so what? He goes, what credit is that to you? In essence, he's saying, so what? He said, even sinners love those who love them. In other words, if you're only doing it to the people that you know you can expect that kind of treatment back, what good is that? No, you're supposed to love your enemies. You're supposed to love everybody in this way. If you do good to those who do good to you, so what? Even sinners do that. If you lend to those from whom you hope to receive, so what? He's going on in that vein, using the same things that he used up above, saying this is how you need to act. You need to act in a way that's different than that rule of reciprocity. Now, that whole law of reciprocity, as we see it in the Old Testament, was meant to limit how much you punish someone who offends you. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Well, if you go ahead and do that in the same way as to how you act in everyday life, okay, love, give, receive. It's a back and forth thing. But Jesus is saying, no, we go beyond that as God's people. Love your enemies, do good and lend, expecting nothing in return. You just do it. And why do you do it? It's because when you do it, you're a child of God. And how does God treat his children? Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. And you know how merciful God is? Go to the verse just before that. He's kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. What? God's love knows no boundaries. If we live by the golden rule, do to others as you would have them do to you, yeah, that's a thought process. That's how I would like them. But usually we kind of have an idea when we live that way that, okay, this person, that person is going to respond in a positive way to me. So that's who I'll shower my love and affections on. Jesus is saying, that's not how you live. That golden rule we tend to interpret that as having boundaries. There are no boundaries to God's love. There's no boundaries to the way you are going to love people in this world. And you know what? Sometimes it comes back to bite us. Oh, it doesn't really say that right here. We get that in the rest of the gospel, that this way of discipleship is not a guarantee that everything's going to come up roses. In fact, as we continue our march through the Gospel of Luke, we're going to see just how much trouble that got Jesus and his disciples into, how much trouble it gets the early church into, because sometimes it does invite the world to take advantage of us and to do harm to us. But Jesus says, do it. This is the way God acts toward his people and even those who don't claim to be his people. Love unmerited, love without boundaries. God who is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. We need to do the same. Wow, this is kind of blowing my mind, and I'm not so sure I'm ready for it. How about you? God's blessings be with you this day.